Hello, Starseeds! Welcome to Starseed Energetics. My name is Ashtara, missioned to bring you some of the highest frequency content, and that is an actual fact. And today I'm here to discuss with you my recent ayahuasca journey and all of the truths and perspectives that I've witnessed through those sacred ceremonial states. And this was my first time doing ayahuasca, which is very unusual considering how much of an explorer I am of consciousness and how many out of body type of experiences that I've already had naturally. But that is kind of partially why I didn't feel the need to go and experiment with this until it was like the completely right, divinely aligned time for me. I didn't want to rush through it or force it to happen. I wanted it to be at a time and space. And I also wanted it to be in Peru because I always knew that for me specifically, I had this intuitive, very otherworldly calling to Peru since I was a child. Before I even knew what Peru was, that it was even a country, I saw this word Peru in one of the books in my dad's library, and my dad had like thousands of books, and I one day found this book. It's about a bird in Peru, and it was like a novel. It wasn't any nonfiction, it was a novel. And something hit me, like literally energetically in the head, and I was like, what is this Peru? What is that? And I just knew, like, I have many instances in my life where something like that happened, and I know that it's part of my puzzles to my soul mission. So I wanted it to be in Peru. Obviously, there was a pandemic for a couple of years, and I was just fine to wait until the right time. And last year, in around October, I was having a very challenging initiation in my life, and that's when I came across Maestro Orlando Chujandama, who is quite legendary. And many of you know him from the Joe Rogan podcast or Aubrey Marcus. And yet his retreat remains a little bit more low key because it's not one of those Western facilities with these fluffy new age influences. It's actually very traditional. And that kind of scares away a lot of people because it's not a comfortable experience. Compared to a lot of these different facilities all over South America that is quite westernized. And Maestro Orlando doesn't make these informative websites or these kind of facilitators that assist translation. And so, yeah, there's like a little bit of a barrier to go and work with him. And I think that that's there for a reason because it filters out a lot of people. But anyway, I connected with him all the way in November, and I let him know that I have an intention to come and work with him. And then I felt guidance from my counsel, for the lack of a better word, my higher selves, or, my spiritual support team, that I should run a retreat with my community here on Starseed Energetics. And I was like, what? But if there's one thing about me that I take pride in, no matter how irrational or illogical a guidance may come through, when it's really from my soul, when it's really from my spiritual, authentic guidance, then I just listen. And that's the case with almost everything, every decision that I make when it's truly aligned to my authentic higher self, soul, or spiritual support team. I blindly put my faith in it. And that's kind of what I did with this retreat. And that's kind of what I did when I changed my name to Ashtara. A lot of people are like, who gave you that name? It's like my guides, for the lack of a better word. And I had no idea what the meaning was, but after I changed my name, for years and years and years, I reveal new significant layers of meanings about my name. And so, yeah, I have this thing where I just trust them totally. So I ran the retreat. There was a lot of applicants. Thank you so much if you applied. And I'm sorry if I didn't respond to you personally because I'm just getting a hang of working with assistants. Like I had this thing where I just felt like I had to do everything, you know. So yeah, anyway, beautiful group of 8 people joined me for this retreat last month in July. And I knew, obviously, that it was going to be a profound experience, but my expectations were shattered because it was way much more profound than I thought. And it was way much more than I even expected. Even though I knew it was going to be insanely alchemical, all of my expectations were trumped by what actually happened in that week. And I'll explain what actually happened to me in my path and where things are going from here. And this is, I think, amazing to share with you guys in my tribe. And also, I want to share with you some of the things that I've perceived on that level of perspective and how this differs from other out of body experiences. Is that when you are consuming ayahuasca, you're actually entering a state of union with the plant kingdom. And the plant kingdom is a complete kind of fractal of consciousness that is more enlightened than we can imagine. And it's interesting because humanity wouldn't exist without the plant kingdom. The plants are so directly integrated to our well being, and we don't give enough credit for it. But if there were no plants, we would die, completely die. And our survival as a species actually directly is interconnected with the well being of the plant kingdom. And when you take ayahuasca, ayahuasca is one of the highest master medicinal plants, as well as some of the other plants as well. So when you're doing a dieta, for example, so our group went for a week, and it's not really just about ayahuasca, but it's about the other plant medicines that you consume throughout the week. So for example, we had 3 ayahuasca ceremonies, and on the other days we would consume Chiricsananga, and that's what I think is pronounced, but it differs between the shaman and how they gauge the group energy or the individual energy. And then the shaman will prescribe a plant medicine that will complement your journey. And we personally worked with the Chiricsananga plant, and that is a heart opening plant. And so yeah, it's not just about ayahuasca, but it's also about the other plants. And as you know, it is of utmost importance, first of all, that you create the right setting, you go with the right people, you have time to properly open the space and integrate the space. It's not just about that one week, but what are you doing before and after, and who are you with, how are you spending your time, and who is the shaman, where is the facility. Everything is so important to set it up mindfully. And I'm so honored and grateful that we were able to have the most profound group. I loved the people from our group so much, and the shaman, I just couldn't ask for a better shaman and a better experience. In this retreat particularly, we had solitary ceremonies. We had 1 group ceremony and then 2 solitary ceremonies. And a lot of people would be scared by that. But first of all, the shaman, if they are powerful enough, he or she is powerful enough to kind of protect your field from that vicinity level. So like the shaman is still staying in the center, but you have these isolated huts type of thing throughout the whole ground. And for this particular method, you are encouraged to go into these solitary tombos, and the shaman will administer the medicine, and then you solo trip for the whole night. And we had those twice individually, and then we had 1 group ceremony when we started. And a lot of people might freak out at this, especially Western people will be like, that's completely dangerous. What if something happens to you? Blah, 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 blah. But energetically speaking, first of all, if the shaman, again, is transcendent of time and space, of course, he or she can protect your field from some feet away. And second thing is, I personally found the solitary experiences to be the most valuable, profound, and suitable for me. I'm so sensitive to people's energy, and I super highly value work that I can do solitarily. So even when I do psilocybin, like mushrooms or any other kind of psychedelic journeys or spiritual journeys like meditation and things like that, my most valuable experiences come from when I'm alone. I'm just the textbook dictionary definition of an introvert, even though I don't really like to follow the definitions and constructs that are given to our society. Introversion thing, for one, is something that really is applicable to how my energy is set up. And I don't want to live by that kind of rule that I'm an introvert, but I truly, truly gain so much from being alone. And so for me personally, and actually everyone in our group, they loved the introversion solitary ceremony part. And yes, you have to be very spiritually mature. It's not for people who are spiritual infants, who need their hands held, who need to, who are still stuck in the stages of spiritual awakening. But if you're a seasoned spiritual advanced practitioner, then you'll probably love this whole solitary thing. And you know how to take care of energy. So if you're the type of person who will like freak out by seeing ghosts or freak out at nightmares or something like that, this is probably not for you. But for example, if you have a nightmare and then you're able to kind of center back into it, or if you see a ghost in the hallway, then you can be just like, okay, whatever, bye. That you can do the solitary chambers, Um, where do I start? So I was obviously when I ran this retreat, I kind of made a pact with my spiritual team. I'm like, okay, I'll run the retreat instead of going by myself. I'm open to run the retreat, but I want you to make it easy for me. I'm not going to go out of my way to run the retreat. I'll just put the offer out there, and then you guys, my spiritual team, the environment, the universe, arrange everything. I'm not gonna, go out of my way. And then they just really did make it that easy. I put out the offer and people applied, and it like fell together so nicely. I told my spiritual support team, okay, I'll run the retreat, but I'm not gonna go out of my way to hassle to find the space or find the food, arrange everything. I want that all to be easy if this is what you will me to do. And then it was really super easy. I found the retreat spaces right away, the food right away, everything was set up. So I just ran the retreat. This was my first in-person retreat actually, but it happened to be in Ayahuasca. But the funny thing is I ran the retreat and it felt like something that I've been doing my entire freaking life. It's like I was born to do this. It was, and you could ask like my assistant, she also said like, it's insane. Like you were actually born to do this. And it just felt really natural. I planned all of the opening activities, the ceremonies, the intention holding activations, and then also I did an integration ceremony at the end. So 2 days each for opening and integration. And I honestly cannot possibly imagine people who are not spending the conscious time and attention to open and integrate these medicine journeys. I hope that people become more mindful of that process and how important that is. July 9th, I opened the ceremony. July 11th, we went to Maestro Orlando Center, and we ended on July 17th. It was one of the participants' birthday on the opening day of our medicine journey, and then at the end it was like my original birthday. The transformation I can't begin to describe and what I saw, but I will begin. Honestly, this video is not scripted at all. It's not planned. I'm just going with the flow, with the stream of my consciousness. First ceremony, obviously my throat chakra was blasted open because I've been running the retreat. I've been talking and leading ceremonies and leading activations for 2 days. So by the time we were going to have the group ceremony, my throat chakra was just blast open. And at the same time, I was really activated in my mind because I've been running the retreat. You know what I mean? I couldn't just relax and receive. I had to like really hold space. So that was the state that I was in. And then we went into the group ceremony at night, and Maestro Orlando administered the medicine for each of us. And I was just like having a nice trip. I'm like, oh, this is super manageable. I'm happy with this. This is all good. I'm happy. And it seems like the journey is going to stay at this level. Like, I'm really comfortable with this level of like, and it's all good. Like, this is almost going to be over very soon. And then Maestro Orlando started handing out the second dose. I didn't take a second dose because I was like, I'm very comfortable with this level. I'm just going to end it here. But as soon as other people started taking the second dose, all of a sudden things went bam, and I lost my mind. I guess it's been like that point where things start to kick in a lot by the time people are taking the second dose. It means like it should be kicking in. And that dose, that one dose that I took, it blasted me open, and I forgot that I was in a ceremony. I forgot that I took ayahuasca. My mind just melted. My subjectivity melted. Everything melted. And I was just sucked into this dimension, which I would now identify as the fifth dimension, which, if you are familiar with my content, I'm not the person who's usually meddling with the fifth dimension. I don't discriminate, but I like to go into a more higher abstract dimension than the fifth dimension. And I believe that the reason why the medicine took me to the fifth dimension is because it was precisely where I needed to explore, right? Instead of like a realm of geometry or realm of frequencies and colors and sounds, like I had to go into the fifth dimension and see what it's like. And because it's very relevant to where we're at. And I started to scream throughout the entire ceremony because I didn't realize that there was other people around me. And after the whole thing, I felt so embarrassed and so guilty that I've been screaming my head off. But everyone obviously understood. They were like, this is part of what you did. Like, and you helped in certain ways. But I was literally screaming my head off. A lot of what I was yelling was stop. I was like, stop, stop, stop. And then I kept yelling, what the actual fuck? What the actual fuck? What the actual fuck? Stop. What the actual fuck? For like 4 hours. Because what I was witnessing and the amount of information that was running through my field at a rapid pace and the amount of frequency that I had access to. And mind you, the shaman, before we began the group ceremony, he had literally instructed me to sit to his right side. And imagine I'm next to the shaman and I'm just screaming my head off for 4 hours. It's just... But the reason why I was screaming was because I was witnessing the ending, the death of the third dimension. And this is not the first time that I've had this realization, but I've had other journeys into higher dimensions where I received the message of, in this third dimension is where you learn to stop the cycle of creation. Because at some point, it gets too much. The creator field does not know how to distinguish when to stop, why to stop. Like, it's just has this infinite impulse of creating infinite variables and constructs and polarities, and there's a point where it has to stop, and there's a point for a reason where it has to stop, and there's a point where you need to discern, yes, everything is possible to create, but here is where we draw the line. And that is largely why we're here as conscious creators on the third dimension, where things are the most polaric it's ever been. There is so many variables, more than any other dimension, and we need to put an end to that loop. And that's why I kept yelling, stop. And there are some things in creation that are in the mode of creation that creator keeps creating that we need to report back as divine conduits of consciousness that have the ability to experience the actual creation, where we need to be like, okay, that needs to stop. We don't create things like this anymore. We draw the line, we discern. And that's why I kept yelling, stop. And then I got the message when I was witnessing all of these collapsing of these timelines of the polaric dimensions. The entire epitome of this dimension, this third dimension, the essence of the experience of this third dimension is reduced to the phrase, what the actual fuck? And that's why I kept yelling, what the actual fuck? Like, if you actually witness this dimension from an enough proximity to narrate the experience, such as from like a fifth dimension, and you look down at the third dimension, so not like in a high observing point where you're like, oh, that's what's going on, but if you're in a proximity to actually witness the entire patterning of this dimension, the linguistic expression is reduced to what the actual fuck. That's it. Stop. And I don't want to sit here and hear about people being like, everything has a purpose, everything has a reason, everything should exist because it exists. Like, no. There's a point where we draw the line for a fucking good reason, right? So we need to discern, where does it stop? And where is it not okay? Like, divine creator doesn't just get an all access pass to create whatever the fuck in the fucking polaric variable that ever can exist. We need to cooperate and report back, where do we draw the line? And that's our service. So just wanted to first share that part. And there's a lot of elements to what I saw in that first ceremony that is personal to me, but I want to first share the collective message that I can share, you know? And I was so confused on the second day of what in the world happened in that journey, because I, again, would never consciously choose to go into the fifth dimension. I'm like a fan of, again, abstract geometries, frequencies, light, sound, abstract, higher level dimensions, as you probably know. And yeah, essentially what I witnessed when I was yelling stop and what the actual fuck was, I experienced a fractal of the collective humanity that felt this deep wounding of the abandonment from the divine. And not that the divine abandoned the collective, but it's more like this illusion of being abandoned and having disconnection from the divine and that abandonment wound. And I was just terrified of how that felt, because personally, I don't think I ever felt it to that degree. Of course, in my life, there's been moments where I felt like, what the actual fuck? Like, why is this life? But there's a collective mass population that you can't even relate to because you're obviously spiritually awakened if you're watching this. But there's a mass collective that feels completely abandoned and neglected from the divine. And I got a taste of what it feels like to have that wound and perspective. And it was just the most terrifying feeling that kept looping. And I just experienced that from the fifth dimension. So it's even worse because if you're in the third dimension, you actually have this sovereign ability to kind of calibrate to your individual experience. But on the fifth dimension, because the nature of the fifth dimension is so much more connected to one another, if you fall into a kind of cycle or a wave, it keeps repeating, looping, and it's a lot more difficult to center back to your desired state. And the message that I received from being in that state, and it would actually go up and down. I wasn't just stuck in that abandonment mass collective, but I kept cycling from that state to like the opposite end of the spectrum, like this pristine bliss at the other end of the fifth dimension. So like from the higher fifth dimension to the lower fifth dimension, I kept waving back in and out, and it was literally unstoppable. It was so crazy. And it's only then that, like, in those states, during those journeys, or in your just natural state at all, whenever these overwhelming waves crash and go, the remedy is to center truly in your heart, and it eventually all the energies kind of neutralize. Like, your heart space is the most important toolkit for your entire life, including in those journeys. But because I literally like overdosed on the first ceremony, and it's not because of the shaman, but it's actually my sensitivity, that shouldn't have knocked people out that much, but to me that was like an overdose, because I'm very sensitive to those, just DMT in general, because even if I don't take anything, I'm having these experiences anyway. So can you imagine? But also at the same time, I'll explain to you why this experience had been so insanely intense for me in the first ceremony. The message that I got was that fifth dimension is extremely damaged. It's distorted and it's damaged. And on the third dimension, we have to help heal the fifth dimension from here on the third dimension. Honestly, all I wanted to do when I was on that fifth dimensional level that is completely distorted, that I haven't really explored before, was that I wanted to return to the third dimension. And I think it's so highly dangerous that people keep talking about the fifth dimension as if it's like heaven. Yes, there's a higher fifth dimension, and you'll be able to access it with a certain level of consciousness. But the entirety of the fifth dimension, the entire dimension itself, has a lot of wounds, and it has a lot of challenges, and it has a lot of distortions and damage. And part of why we're here on the third dimension is that it is a lot more easy to navigate than if you're in the fifth dimension as an individual. Because consciousness is less individuated on the fifth dimension, it's also more difficult to perform these targeted healings from that state. So, again, stop trying to escape to the fifth dimension and just understand the power and blessings that you get to access on the third dimension. So essentially by the end of the ceremony, I realized that I was alive, that I was in the ceremony. I started to see into my future timelines, and I was like kind of integrating back into this individuated life form. And I was like, thank God it's over. That was actually a journey. Like, I literally thought it just happened. I didn't even realize that I was in Peru or that I was taking the medicine. Like, I literally was gone. And then I started to anchor back, and I was like, wow, thank God. Thank goodness I'm coming back to Earth. Um, and then I had my final purge. Like, after the whole ceremony was over, I puked in the bucket, and I looked at the maestro. I looked at our shaman. I was like, sir, this is the first and the last time that I'm doing this. I'm not doing this again. I only need to do that once. And I just like, and he was just smiling. He was just looking at me and smiling. Then we just all went back into the room, just tripping out and like try to sleep, but we couldn't really sleep that much. Next day, we went into the tombos in the jungle. And we had a couple of people within our group that spoke Spanish and English. And so he let us kind of ask questions through our beloved group translators, who didn't sign up to be a translator, but they ended up playing that role because they spoke Spanish and English. And he came by with one of our translators and gave us some time to discuss anything or talk about whatever, ask any questions about the first ceremony. And for a lot of the people in the group, it was their first time doing ayahuasca, interestingly enough. And majority of our group was actually, for this time, they were goddesses, they were female. And the conversation that I had with Maestro, the shaman, it was very difficult to speak through the translator because I'm sure if the conversation was casual, it would have been fine. But because our beloved translators were not actually professional translators, they're just, casual conversationalists and not entirely too fluent in one or the other language. Like, one of our translators, the guy, he's actually from Peru, Roberto. Hello, if you're watching this, he's more fluent in Spanish and not too fluent in English. And then the girl, Elise, if you're watching this, hello. She's fluent more in English, but not that fluent in Spanish. So there was like a little bit of a mismatch in the language still. And because the nature of the conversation was so deep, it was really challenging. So anyway, essentially he sat down and I had to clarify this with him through WhatsApp using Google Translator later on. But he kind of sat down and he said, a path opens up ahead of you now. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, you have a new path to walk. And then he kind of just told me the following, that I'm pretty much destined to work with medicine and, for the lack of a better phrase, explore the shamanic path. He literally said to me, he has a mission to help the people on earth through medicine. And then he said, so do you. And mind you, this shaman is literally one of the most legendary shamans in Peru. He comes from a lineage that is highly, 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 highly respected. He comes from a lineage of shamans that is like, his grandfather was one of the most well-respected shamans in Peru. They're from Tarapoto. And then both his mom and his dad were shamans. And actually, they unfortunately passed when he was just a little kid. So he was just trained by his grandfather. But in short, he's a legend, and he hadn't even initiated any of his children to become shamans. Like he has 5 children, and then he has a bunch of relatives, but we asked him in the beginning, like, have you initiated any of your children to become shamans? And he said no, none of them have been chosen. But then after the first ceremony, where I literally was screaming my head off for 4 hours and told him that I'm not going to take this again, he comes to me the next day and told me that I'm initiated. And he said, the yesterday's ceremony was your initiation. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I don't even want to do this again. Like, you mean I have to take this after this week? And he's like, your soul is destined for this. And it's not something, trust me, that I thought about ever. Like, that's not what I thought I would ever want to do. I mean, I like mushrooms, but like, especially after that first ceremony, I was just like, what in the world? And then I asked him like later without the translator, because I think the translator was just as off put by what he was trying to say to me, that the conversation was just so, like clunky, because the message was like, what? The next, so later on I asked him, like, when did you know this would happen? Like, when did you know that I was to be initiated? And he's like, the moment that you arrived here. And mind you, I don't think he ever initiates people, just like, that's crazy. But I just kind of was in my mind just ruminating about, like, what in the fuck? And whatever. Whatever. Then we had our solitary ceremonies twice more. And even though I told him I'm never going to do this again, obviously I'm going to do it again. So, second ceremony, and I was really excited to do this alone, because it obviously, like in the group ceremony, you're also tapping into the group energy, and whatever you end up doing or experiencing is part of the group energy too. So I'm like, man, I'm really looking forward to doing this alone, because my comfort level with myself, just holding my own space, is just a lot better. He gave me just a light dosage on the second ceremony. And then I was just like, I saw a lot of different pieces. And then the third ceremony, which is like a couple days later on, he gave me a proper dose again. And in that ceremony, what happened in that ceremony, I got so many downloads about my soul mission. And if I were to talk about my soul mission in complete entirety, I think that's not really, I think it's something that I have to kind of keep to myself, because there's a lot of people who are already so jealous of everything. And let me just tell you, like, when I saw visions of how everything that I've been working on already, because if you know my soul's mission, pieces that I share here and there, it has a lot to do with advanced technology. I was studying exponential technology for years and years and years before it was ever in the mind of the masses. Like before virtual reality was a thing, before artificial intelligence was a thing, when everybody thought it was literally science fiction, I was getting a master's degree in all of it. And I've gotten many kind of guidance and downloads around the type of technology, conscious technology, that I'm meant to create to assist humanity. And in the third ceremony, I was shown visions of how I am to integrate that with the plant kingdom, and hence the initiation into shamanism and the exploration of that realm. So, essentially, I did talk to the shaman again through WhatsApp, because I honestly felt like the messages were so distorted from the translators. Again, because I think they themselves were shocked. Because I think it's so outside of the construct of what people think is possible. Like, why would any traditional ancestral lineage of shaman initiate a random Korean girl from what? Anyways, I did thankfully have a chance to speak with him through Google Translator, and I did ask him details about that, and he did say, yeah, I'm meant to explore that path, and it's part of my purpose. And yeah, I sensed that even with the soul mission that I saw, getting it refined and seeing what's going to happen, and even just getting initiated from Maestro Orlando, I felt this wave of jealousy coming from people. And I know that I'm younger and maybe I don't appear to be, like your traditional master healer or teacher, but I freaking am. And I highly doubt that most people, even if it looks like it's important, if you were given the huge level of responsibility to deal with this and you saw what is required to actually carry it through, I highly doubt most people would even want to do it. It's a lot of responsibility. So stop hating on me and stop being jealous. I don't know if that's going to change anything about the people who are always dashing out jealousy. And I honestly sense that even from my own group. Like some of them were super resistant when this happened. Obviously, some of them were celebrating, like, this makes so much sense. Like, I could totally see you doing this. But some of them were seriously jealous. And I'm just like, why? Did I consciously try to get an initiation? Like, it was out of my scope for 1,000. Like, I would never even have guessed. And do you know what I have to do now? Like, do you know the level of work that is required for me to devote into this now? And I have to now move to South America. So, anyway, long story short, this whole thing, I'm now on my way to return to Bali, where it has been my base for the past couple of years. And it's insane because been getting messages and guidance that my grid work in Bali is almost coming to a closure. And I was like, where am I going to go next? I always thought about that. I was like, maybe it's going to be in America, like North America, or like maybe another country in Asia. And then now I understand my next level of grid work is in South America. So now I have to go back and wrap up everything in Bali, get rid of all the extraneous things there, wrap everything up, close all the chapters, deal with the storage units that I have there. And next year, around January or February, I will move my base continent to South America. Massive, so I can pursue this path. And it's not just about the shaman initiating me, but it's also the third ceremony and the vision that I saw and what I've been given to create. And it's not going to be your traditional sense of plant medicine ceremonies, but I've been given a mission to combine a lot of different elements of what I'm working with so far with technology and things like that, and create what I'm meant to create in South America. So, yeah, that's my destination next year. Long story short, uh, I'll be running Earthship now every year as part of my soul's path. And it's not just about me running a retreat, it's actually like my service. And I'm meant to do this. I'm meant to open the space. And I will be working with Maestro Orlando. Our souls are quite connected. And so I'll be offering this next year if you're interested. And obviously, it's far away. It's going to be in July again, or maybe August. I literally was thinking about making it over the Lionsgate next year. And like, I don't have an application form yet, but you can always subscribe to my email list, and I send out all the emails that are important. So make sure that you're subscribed to my email. If you just go on my website, link below, ashtararen.com, and you go to like the free gifts or like just sign up for my email list, you can keep posted on there. And yeah, it's the most profound retreat ever. Like, and I'm saying this from an objective perspective. Like, it was insane. And the group of people that are attracted to this vortex is like, I feel like they're my family and friends. Amazing, lovely group of people that are so harmonized and that you'll just fall in love with. Anyway, that pretty much kind of sums up what I'm here to share about that. Other things that I've witnessed are more personal things that I don't really feel like is relevant for me to share here. It was so amazing. Everybody had such a profound journey, and yeah, I'm still integrating it all. I'm currently in Dubai. I'm on my way back to Bali. I'm staying here for a couple of weeks. Dubai is one of my bases, and people are like, why are you in Dubai? But like, it's an amazing place. And it's really not about the anything that people label Dubai as, but you really have to see the place and experience the place to understand the energy. And I think that way too many people make assumptions about places or things or dimensions without actually experiencing it. So yeah, it's an amazing place. It's where I have one of my bases. I'm here twice a year. And yeah, next destination, South America. Let's go. Sending lots of love. I hope that this video has been cool to watch, entertaining at least. And I will look forward to seeing you really soon. I'm going to be releasing some Lionsgate material, activations, and pick a card and ASMR. Okay, love you. Bye.